It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them. "You're just a guest with benefits. Don't forget that." He stood at the kitchen threshold, arms folded, like he was making a business transaction. His voice flat, unshaken. No anger, no sarcasm, just a declaration. I looked up from the sink. Dish soap still on my hands. The water ran behind me, untouched, hot. I should have been angry, should have barked back, demanded an apology, asked what the hell he meant by that. But something in me just stopped. The words didn't land like a punch. They landed like a verdict. And I knew then I wasn't his stepfather. I wasn't a mentor. I wasn't family. I was the live-in contractor who overstayed his usefulness. I dried my hands slowly, watching him retreat up the stairs like he hadn't just torn something sacred in half. No slammed doors. No follow-up. Just silence. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't turn on the lights either. Just stood in the hallway staring at the closed door of the boy I once tried to love like my own. The door I had replaced after he kicked it in during an argument with his mother. The carpet I had shampooed after he vomited on it the night he came home drunk for the first time. The very floor beneath my feet. Refinished, sanded, sealed with my labor, my hours, my back. And yet I was just a guest. At 2:17 a.m. I opened the bedroom closet, reached for the old black suitcase with the broken zipper. The one I hadn't touched since the day I moved in. It still smelled like the hotel room I lived in before Sandra. A faint trace of mildew and travel detergent. I laid it on the bed and began folding. I didn't take much. A few shirts, the pair of boots Carter hated, my cologne, the charger she always borrowed. No photographs, no keepsakes, no wedding band. The next hour I spent moving through the house in silence, as if walking through the ashes of a fire I hadn't noticed burning. Every room carried fingerprints of effort. The upgraded outlets, the hand-sewn curtains I hung one Sunday because Sandra said the light felt too raw. The ceiling fan I installed in Carter's room when he complained about summer heat. Every fix, every compromise, every quiet gift. I went out on the balcony for a smoke. Not the front porch, I wanted no ceremony. Just the back deck where I had spent so many Saturday mornings drinking coffee and reading manuals on how to install garbage disposals or fix a broken gutter. It was cold, but I didn't feel it. I stood there in that heavy, invisible armor worn only by men who've done everything right and still lost the room. The street was quiet, the kind of suburban quiet that has no real silence. Just the faint hum of transformers and distant traffic and the occasional bark of a sleepless dog. I looked at the neighboring houses, their lights soft behind drawn curtains. Families inside, maybe bickering, maybe holding each other, but no one was being told they were a guest in their own home. When the cigarette burned low, I flicked it into the yard and stepped back in. The kitchen counter still had the mug from earlier. My mug. World's okayest stepfather. A gag gift from Sandra 3 Christmases ago. I stared at it for a long time before placing the envelope next to it, thick with the last rent payment, and a note written in my cleanest cursive. No more benefits, no confrontation, no drama, just a line drawn in ink. That morning they woke to a different house. No hot water. The water heater was on my account, tied to an app that now refused to connect. No Wi-Fi, router unplugged and tucked inside the cabinet. No insurance either. I had unlinked their names from my health policy before the sun rose. The groceries were gone. The fridge hummed, empty. And the car they both used? The keys were with me in that suitcase, now locked in the trunk of my pickup. They stepped into a hollow version of the life I had carried. And I was already 20 miles down the interstate, hands tight on the wheel, eyes fixed on a future I hadn't yet imagined. But I was free, not happy, not even angry. Just released. My name is Ryan. I'm 43. 5 years ago, I married Sandra. A bright, capable woman with an easy laugh and 1,000 unread emails. We met at a logistics conference in Austin. I remember the way she held her coffee, both hands like it might slip away. I found that tender. We talked late into the night, swapping stories about failed marriages and unpaid taxes. She told me about her son, Carter, A smart, stubborn teenager who liked basketball and hated his dad. She said he needed a man around. A stable one. I told her I wasn't looking for a family, but maybe I was lying. Or maybe I thought I could be something different this time. I moved in 6 months later. Her home, a modest 2-bedroom just outside Atlanta, was dated, but sturdy. Like her. The paint peeled. The deck was warped. The heater was loud. But I liked it. Felt like something I could fix. I started small. Repaired the banister. Replaced the thermostat. Paid off her credit card. Took Carter to his practices. Sat in the bleachers next to other dads who didn't recognize me. I didn't wear team colors. Didn't shout from the stands. Just clapped quietly, made sure he had rides, made sure the water bottles were cold. I never tried to be his father. That role was already taken by a ghost who came and went whenever he pleased, usually around birthdays and the holidays that needed photographs. I never tried to compete. I just tried to be steady. There was no big moment of rejection. No violent argument. Just a slow erosion. At first, Carter was polite. Guarded but polite. Thanks, he'd mutter when I fixed his laptop or dropped him off at school. But that thanks turned to silence. Then rolled eyes. Then absence. Doors closed more often. Conversations shortened. I was a silhouette he stepped around. Sandra would shrug. He's adjusting. Teenagers pull away. But it wasn't distance, it was dismissal. Year 3, I put him on my health insurance. Year 4, I started contributing to his college savings. Not because he asked, but because I believed in building a future. That's what you do when you believe in a family. You plant seeds, even if you might never see them bloom. But the ground was poisoned. I just hadn't realized it yet. We never had shouting matches. That would have meant there was something worth fighting for. Instead, we lived in a state of cold civility. I worked late. He stayed out later. Sandra floated between us like a diplomat too tired to mediate. One time I asked him to take the trash out. Just once. He stared at me and said, "I didn't ask for you to move in." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the honesty was refreshing. For once, there was no mask. Just the bare truth, held up like a broken mirror. But nothing compared to that final night. That sentence. "You're just a guest with benefits. Don't forget that." I think about that line often. It wasn't just cruelty, it was clarity. A boy who had lived on the foundation of my effort finally told the truth. I was nothing more than a convenience. An optional feature in the life he believed was already complete. And Sandra? She heard him say it. She stood at the sink, just like me. Said nothing. Not a word in my defense. Not even a wince. Just kept rinsing plates like this was another Tuesday. That silence told me everything I needed to know. So I left. Not in rage. Not in bitterness. But in certainty. I had tried. God knows I had tried. But some families aren't broken. They're just built that way. And I was the only one who ever showed up with glue in my hands. Carter's biological father, Mark, showed up once every few months. Not out of love. Out of guilt. Out of performance. Out of the sudden urge to be seen without the burden of staying. He'd sweep in with courtside tickets, designer shoes, or Bluetooth headphones that still had the price sticker on them. Always gifts. Never groceries. Never school fees. Never responsibility. And Carter lit up when he came. Glowed even. That man could walk in late, reeking of whatever woman had just kicked him out, and still be met with a kind of worship I had never earned with years of loyalty. I used to tell myself it didn't matter. That presence was worth more than blood. That building a future meant showing up even when you weren't invited. That sooner or later, Carter would see the difference between a father and a man playing dress-up. But one night, after Carter had come home from a party, reeking of weed and cheap beer, he slammed the door behind him and threw his sneakers against the wall. I asked if everything was all right. He didn't answer at first. Just stood there, shoulders heaving, eyes red. Then he said it. "Mom could have done better. You were just the easy option." It wasn't a shout. It was worse. He said it like it was a fact, like I needed to be reminded. Like he was embarrassed by my existence. I stared at him. Didn't flinch. Didn't speak. I looked past him, at the cabinets I had built by hand, the ones with soft close hinges because Sandra said she hated the sound of drawers slamming. I looked at the washer, the third one I'd repaired, the kitchen island we used for birthdays and homework, the chair where I used to sit during Carter's late-night rants about finals. I saw everything I'd held up, everything I'd built, and realized none of it meant anything. I was scaffolding, temporary, functional, replaceable, and like all scaffolding, I would only be noticed when removed, when the house began to crack. 3 days later, I was gone. No goodbye, no speech, just a quiet extraction. Every account I'd created to hold that family together dissolved. Every password shared changed. Every credit card Carter used, frozen. I unlinked my name from the mortgage, canceled every automatic payment, and redirected my mail to a P.O. box I hadn't used since before Sandra. The house would still stand, for now, but it would creak. I rented a small studio downtown, concrete floors, one window. I furnished it with pieces I found secondhand, a table with a scratch across the top, a mattress still wrapped in plastic, one lamp. That was it. No photos, no framed memories, just emptiness and quiet. It was beautiful. I had some savings left. Not much. I had been putting money away for Carter's college fund. A modest one. Enough to cover books, housing, maybe even study abroad if he worked part-time. It sat in a separate account, untouched, because I told myself I wouldn't spoil him. I'd just support him. But that money no longer had a name. I remember sitting at my desk in that studio, staring at the screen. The bank site asked if I wanted to transfer the funds. I hovered over the button, thought of all the birthdays, the field trips, the gas money he never thanked me for. Then I clicked, emptied it, not into my own pocket, into something better. I called an old friend, Marcus, who used to work in foster care advocacy. Told him I had an idea, a fund, not just for tuition but for mentorship, for kids who had nothing, kids who had no one showing up for them at 7 a.m. with a wrench to fix their broken faucet. Kids who weren't gifted Air Jordans once a year from a ghost but who needed bus passes, laptops, and someone to read their college essays when the world told them they were statistics. Marcus didn't hesitate. We spent months planning. I worked nights, drafted proposals, reached out to local nonprofits, created a small grant system with basic requirements. Grit, focus, need. No GPA thresholds. No essays about why I'm exceptional. Just honesty. Just proof they were trying. When it launched, we called it the Legacy Initiative. Not because I wanted my name on it, but because I wanted something to outlive the years I gave to a family that would never speak mine again. Our first recipient was a 19-year-old named Elijah. Quiet, sharp, wanted to be an electrician. No backup, no parents, just a toolbox and a will. I remember handing him the check. It wasn't huge, $3,000. But it was enough to get him certified, buy the equipment, and start working. He held the envelope like it was glass. Looked up at me with a kind of disbelief that broke something in me. I thought this stuff only happened in movies, he whispered. I nodded. It does. But only after somebody stops waiting to be thanked. The local paper did a story on us. Small column. Photo included. Just me and Elijah in front of a battered van he'd borrowed from his uncle. The headline, Former Stepfather Launches Foundation for Youth After Family Breaks Apart. They used the word stepfather. I didn't correct it. I didn't add a comment. But Sandra saw it. She didn't reach out. Not then. I think it embarrassed her, or maybe it made her confront something she'd worked hard to ignore. That I had taken all the pieces of our broken household and built something better with them. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. Just out of clarity. Carter, though, he reached out. He didn't call. Didn't email. He showed up. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the office where we ran the fund. A modest space with creaky floors and peeling paint. I was organizing old laptops to be refurbished when I saw him standing at the door. Same hoodie. Same haircut. Same look of practiced indifference. He held the newspaper in one hand. You got a minute? He asked. I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around like he expected cameras. Or judgment. Or both? This is what you used it for? He asked, lifting the paper. I nodded. Yeah. He scoffed. So this is your hero arc? I didn't blink. No. This is the version of fatherhood that actually matters. He flinched, not visibly, but enough. Then he dropped the paper on the table and muttered, So this was your revenge. I took a breath. Not deep, just enough to stay grounded. You called me a guest, I said. Guests don't stay forever. He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to ask something. But I cut him off. Everything you had, the rides, the rent, the college fund, the broken AC unit I crawled under the house to fix, was never my obligation. I gave it because I believed in family. You told me I wasn't part of it. So I stopped pretending. He looked around again, saw the old couch, the coffee machine with a donation jar beside it. He looked at the whiteboard with kids' names, future recipients, and the quiet hum of a space run by those who had been broken and chose to build anyway. Then he said it. I didn't value what you did. Just that. Not sorry. Not regret. Just acknowledgement. I nodded. I know. He looked down, voice lower. I don't know when that changes, but I'm not pretending anymore. I didn't hug him, didn't offer reconciliation, didn't offer anything. But I said this. I don't hold grudges, but I don't chase people either. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. But I'm done proving I deserve to be in a place that made it clear I don't belong. He didn't reply, just nodded, turned, and left. And that was enough. Not closure, not peace, but something honest. Something that didn't need fixing. The story in the paper made its rounds. A grainy black and white photo, a 2-column feature buried beneath local politics and school closures. But it traveled. A few shares online. A handful of comments. A quiet buzz that echoed farther than I expected. It reached Sandra. I knew it would. She was never one for confrontation, but she was always tuned in. Always scanning for the signs of a shift. A change in tone. A whisper of disruption. The silence after the article dropped told me everything I needed to know. She didn't know how to explain it. Not to herself. Not to her friends. Not to Carter. She didn't call. But he did. No warning. No text. Just the sudden echo of knuckles against the glass door of our office. I had just finished sorting another batch of backpacks, donated supplies from a local chain, when I saw him. Carter. He walked in like he owned the place. Like the old house still echoed behind his steps. The same slouch, the same indifferent frown. But this time he was holding the newspaper. Folded. Creased at the corners. Read more than once. He dropped it on the table. This is how you do it? Make a charity your redemption arc? His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Like he'd come rehearsed. I looked at him. Really looked. Not as a boy. Not as the kid I once made waffles for before school, or the teenager I picked up drunk from a bonfire. I looked at him as a man, and realized he still hadn't become one. I didn't start anything for redemption, I said. I started it because I was tired of investing in people who treated me like a backup plan. He scoffed. You really think this makes you a saint? No, I said calmly. But it makes me useful. And that's more than I was to you. That landed. Not with a crash, but with a slow sink. Like he had to process it backward to understand just how long I'd been carrying that truth. He moved toward the bulletin board, photos of our ments, sticky notes with volunteer shifts, scribbled lists of supplies. He stared at it like it was foreign. You took the money you saved for me, he said, quieter now. Put it here. I nodded. It wasn't yours anymore. Because I insulted you? He said. Because I said you were a guest? No, I replied. Because you meant it. The silence stretched. Then he turned, voice rising. You think you're better than us now? You think because you helped some kids, that erases what you did? What did I do, Carter? I asked. Besides pay your rent, your school fees, your insurance. Besides show up. Fix what your real father never stayed long enough to notice was broken. What exactly do you think I'm running from? He didn't have an answer. Just that scowl. The armor he always wore when logic had nowhere to land. He shifted tactics. You abandoned us, he said. Just left. Like it was easy. I leaned forward. Do you know what I took with me when I left? He blinked. What? Nothing, I said. Not a single object. Not a chair. Not a picture. Not even the tools I bought. I left it all behind because I wanted you to see the difference. I wanted you to feel what it's like when scaffolding disappears. He bit his lip. Angry, maybe, or afraid to say what came next. She cried when you left, he muttered. I know, I said. But not because she lost a husband. She cried because the bill came due, because she realized silence has a cost. He looked up sharply. You think she didn't try? No, I said. I think she tried just enough to keep the house quiet. Not enough to keep the house whole. He didn't speak for a while after that. I saw it then, the slow fracture. Not remorse. Not yet. But awareness. The creeping weight of consequence. She said you were gone for good, he finally said. I was, I replied. Until I found something better to carry. He looked back at the board. Elijah's picture was still up, our first grant recipient. His smile broad, holding his new toolbox. Beside him, a post-it note in my handwriting. First hire, fall 2024. Carter's voice cracked when he asked, You think I don't regret it? I don't care if you do, I said. Regret doesn't build anything. It just sits there, useless, like an unpaid invoice. He turned to leave, stopped at the door. You're not going to forgive me, are you? I shook my head. That's not what this is about. This isn't about me being angry. This is about me finally living like I matter. He opened the door, paused, then left without another word. I thought that was it. But 6 months later a letter came. Real paper. Envelope. No return address, but the handwriting gave it away. Slanted, unsure, trying too hard to be neat. I opened it carefully. The first line read, I still don't know if I meant it. It went on. I was angry, you know that. But I think I was more scared. Scared of how much you had done. Scared of how much I owed you without knowing how to say thank you. I hated the idea of needing you, so I tore it down. That's what boys do when they're too weak to say I'm sorry. They destroy the bridge and act like they never wanted to cross it. I sat there for a long time, holding that paper like it was something sacred. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't say the words, but he said what mattered. I see it now. You didn't have to do any of it. But you did. And I threw it away. At the bottom he wrote, If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I don't expect anything. I get it now. I really do. I read it twice. Then I turned it over and wrote a reply on the back. Short. Honest. I don't hold grudges. But I don't chase people either. If you want to talk, I'll listen. But I'm done proving my worth to anyone. Especially family. I folded it, placed it in a new envelope, and dropped it in the mail. No promise. No invitation. Just a door, left unlocked. That's all I had left to give. And it was enough. Every year when I stand in front of a new group of kids, scholarship recipients, ments, sons of no one, I wear the same shirt I wore the night I walked out of that house. It's not some symbolic gesture. Not some public reminder of triumph. It's just the only piece of that life I chose to keep. The fabric still smells faintly of sawdust and soap. There's a tear beneath the left cuff from where I caught it on the old fence I rebuilt in Sandra's yard. I leave it that way, not to remember the work, but to remember the mistake of doing it for the wrong people. People ask me now, sometimes after the speeches or the grant ceremonies, do you ever think about going back? They ask gently, like they're handling a wound. Like maybe I just need the right moment, the right apology, the right scene. I don't answer them, because there's no going back to a place that never let you in. Back then, I thought I was building something sacred. A home. A legacy. Family. I thought love could be earned. That respect was just a delayed dividend, waiting on maturity. That if I carried them long enough, they'd eventually turn around and say, he was more than enough. But I was wrong. Respect isn't earned. Not in silence. Not in service. Respect is given freely or not at all. And once it's denied, no amount of sacrifice buys it back. I stayed too long. That's the truth. I stayed through slammed doors and half-thanks. I stayed through every insult disguised as adolescence. Every slight dismissed as growing pains. I stayed even when the bills said I was the backbone and the family said I was a stranger. Why? Because I thought that's what men do. They endure. They build. They suffer in silence. They don't ask for credit, just continuity. But endurance without acknowledgement is not strength. It's erasure. So I stopped enduring. Not to punish. Not to make a point. But because you can't keep pouring into people who treat you like a faucet they didn't ask for. When I left everything. Not just the furniture or the passwords or the insurance premiums. I left the version of myself that believed proximity was love. That believed sacrifice was currency. I don't believe that anymore. Now, I build for those who understand the cost. The kids who flinch when they're told they matter. The ones who ask, "Are you sure?" When you offer help because they've never been anyone's priority before. They don't need me to be their dad. They just need me to stay. And I do. Every week I get letters, updates, first paychecks, first apartments, first vacations ever taken. One kid sent me a photo from the top of a mountain he climbed with a youth group we helped fund. On the back he wrote, "Never thought I'd be above the clouds." He's not the only one. When people say I walked away from my family, I correct them. I walked toward one, a real one, built not on blood, but on belief, on the sacred exchange of time, respect, and mutual need. People ask me, "Do you regret leaving?" Some days, I remember the quiet Sunday mornings, the smell of Sandra's coffee, Carter sitting on the floor, back before the scorn took root. I remember laughter, even if it was rare. But no, I don't regret it, because the day I walked out I stopped being a guest, and started being a man with a choice, not to be loved, not to be missed, but to be free. Free from a house where silence cost more than kindness. Free from proving my worth to people who weighed it in guilt. Free to build something that doesn't crumble the moment I stop holding it up. So I wear the shirt, and when I see their faces, the new kids, the ones nobody's ever chosen, I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. They ask, "Why did you do this?" And I say, because once upon a time, I gave everything to a family that said I wasn't part of it. And when I left, I realized I wasn't leaving them behind. I was finally choosing me. So now I ask you quietly, honestly, when is the last time you walked away from something that kept asking more and giving less? When is the last time you stopped proving your worth to people who'd already decided they didn't see it? Because maybe the question isn't, was I wrong to leave? Maybe the question is, what took me so long?